implement or create some type of data collection plan. I've been researching a lot about what other institutions are using for data points when they make the decision as to whether or not they're ready to scale up into more sections. So we would certainly have to look at, pass rates. I would like to look at retention rates, over time. It would be something also where we'd have to consider, financial considerations if we need budgeting for training for instructors. So most of the places that have been doing this for a very long time said, it took a few years to kind of get it going, to get to understand what the data was telling them and where to go next. But ultimately, it ended up that, in almost every study I've read, better pass rates, better retention, higher graduation rates, and then also, as a side effect of that, being more fiscally, sustainable.
Yeah, one of the other areas that I know we really struggle with in developmental education is the math area. Is there a similar program like this that's being done in colleges across the country in math?
Yes, absolutely. Their math actually tends to have worse outcomes in developmental education than reading or English. And so, yes, there are many different models out there for different co-requisite forms of math. I know that I saw on KBOR's site, they said that those two types of co-requisite classes were in place already in our state. So that's positive news. It means that other people out there in Kansas are also doing this. So, yep, it's out there and it's happening.
Great. Hey, thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's really great
Thank
that
you.
we're working on this and trying to make some inroads in developmental education because we're all concerned about that. So thank you very much for your work and for the presentation. And thanks, Jerry, for arranging it.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bickford. Just a real quick question for you. Within the content, I know that you'd mentioned that part of it includes note-taking, if you will. My question is there also content that teaches the student time management and some of the, I guess you might say, life skills that are required in order to move forward?
Sure. A lot of those things are addressed in also our Blue 101 class, the first year seminar class, but I also teach a section of that. And so it kind of naturally all flows over into the developmental classes. That's one of the aspects of the non-cognitive pieces is asking students to use a lot of metacognitive strategies to think about things like time management, and then also providing resources for other things that might happen in life, whether it has to do with childcare or accessing healthcare resources, internet resources, addressing things that might otherwise be a roadblock for them. So in the INRW class, you get a lot more opportunity to address those types of things.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Bickford? Okay, thank you again. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, there are no communications scheduled, so we will move to the board and committee reports, please.
Chair Criswell, this is Trustee Bruni reporting on the Board Finance Committee meeting held on Monday, April the 11th, joined there by Trustee Ash and Trustee Isnard and Michael Beach and his entire suite of staff helped us with all the numbers. You're going to hear a lot of the detail as we move through the rest of the meeting. So I'll just remind you that the work of the committee is to through those numbers in great detail and pass them forward to the board with recommendations for approval. Some high-level numbers that might be interesting to hear. Our monthly expenses are still 7.7% down from last year. So we're being very frugal and minding our dollars very, very well. Our operating cash position is $14.9 million higher than last year. Some COVID effect in that as well. We went on to get a lot of information about downtown campus. I'm sure you'll hear from the president about that. The student housing project, COVID-19, some money that our congressional people are helping us search out in terms of adding things to the federal budget, the state budget. So we have a lot of really good friends helping us find where the money is and how we can use it. So I'll close just simply by saying, again, anyone that's out there watching, please mark your calendars. come to the online streaming of the Board Finance Committee. This is where some of the work gets done behind the scenes, and you're always welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, indeed. You're exactly right with your behind the scenes comment, and we certainly do appreciate the Finance Committee. Any questions for Vice Chair Bruni? Okay, thank you for your report. Are there other reports? Committee
Yes,
reports?
this for Trustee Brown for the Community Engagement Committee. We did meet, and we're looking forward to doing some exciting things. We did decide on a mission. The Community Engagement Committee exists to listen and respond to community needs by partnering with various constituents and groups. And if anybody has any concern about maybe we need to change something, you need to let me know soon, because that is, at this point, our mission for the Community Engagement Committee. We are working with Dr. Bartunik to come up with an email address for the group. There's no reason for us to meet if we don't listen to the people we're trying to work with. So we will be getting that information out and letting everybody know what that is. We're going to start with the neighborhood groups. They're already in existence, and we'll be talking with them and see how we are going to expand this community engagement group. So we're looking for some exciting things. Our main goal is to let the community know that we're here to work with them. And that's all I have for now. If anybody else has any other comments on my committee.
Excellent report. Just a quick request. Could you email the board a copy of your mission statement?
Certainly, I certainly will.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate you. All right, any questions for, excuse me, any questions for Trustee Brown? Okay, thank you again. Are there other committee reports?
Madam Chair, just mention that we went to the PTK program and awards. We had 3 Rockstar students there.
Yes.
And they were awesome, along with all the other students from around the state. Did a really great job. Dr. Mosier, Trustee Hoskins Sutton and I attended, and then, of course, a number of our staff members. And then we had a brief Kckcc meeting following. Brief, I say, about 2 hours. And in typical Heather Morgan fashion, she put about 5 hours worth of material into that. And also managed to recognize John Masterson, president of Allen County Community College, who will be retiring at the end of June. And Ray, I think John is the last man standing from the presidents who were seated at the time we became trustees in 2007. So John's had a great run down there. Certainly been great for our entire system. Been a mentor to a lot of other, presidents and even trustees. So, but obviously the meeting centered around the legislature and issues moving through the legislature, particularly the funding issues and so on and so forth. So that work is still ongoing. Dr. Mosier's done a good job of keeping all of us of board members apprised of the various developments and everything. So you all should pretty much be aware of that. And we'll look forward to the session ending here soon, and then we'll know exactly where we stand. But next meeting, I think, is scheduled early June, and so we'll be sure that all of you have information on that as soon as it's finalized. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Trustee Ash. Okay, any questions for Trustee Ash? Okay, and any other committee reports? Okay, hearing none. May I have a motion, excuse me. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Approved. Next on the agenda is the Student Senate report presented by the Student Senate Cabinet.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So we'll start with the introductions. I'm Ikea Elam. I'm parliamentarian of Student Senate, and I am Dejari Guillory. I'm Student Senate President, and we just wanted to cover some of our old business that we've been doing as we wind down the school year. We've had an Easter event. We had a total of 50 families come last week. There was about 200 attendees. It was really fun to see all the kids out there, right?
Yeah, it was a really nice event. We just want to say thank you for everyone that came or participated and just helped us out. It's really nice.
And then we just got done doing a shadowing day last week. I got to shadow Dr. Mosier, of course, and Mike Beach. Me and Dr. Mosier talked a lot about the new housing in downtown that they're building, which was pretty cool hearing about that and everything that he has in store. And then me and Mike Beach talked about how they're updating all the classrooms and what that looks like from the old classrooms to now. So that was pretty cool to see the transformation. And then IKEA.
Yeah, I got to shadow Dr. Myers, which was the president of Student Affairs. And it was just really interesting to just see what he does on the day-to-day basis and just a breakdown of he showed me a lot, but it was really interesting to see the breakdown of school and what he has to go through and how he deals with what he has to do. So.
Yeah, so our whole entire Senate got to pair up with someone, and that was pretty cool. We even got to sit in on a meeting with Dr. Mosher. It was all the presidents of Kansas in a meeting talking about money. Money for the most part. So that was pretty cool.
And then we also got to tour the dorms, the new dorms, and they look really good. It was really nice to see.
And then last we've had our budget meetings last week, our budget hearings, and I can't even talk about what that looks like.
Yeah, so that was our first time doing that because we didn't get to do that last year, and it was just very interesting. It was long, but it was exciting just to see another aspect of the school as far as budgeting, working with money, trying to distribute, calculate, make sure all the numbers, the money are adding up, making sure we're being fair, So it was really good. It was really nice.
So we had a total of 21 clubs present, and it's 10 minutes to present, and then 5 minutes of questioning, where we ask some questions. And last one, we would also like to invite you guys, that's it, but we'd like to invite you guys to our Friday, our very last Senate meeting. It's actually in person. We're going to do Zoom and in person, but it'll be in Lord Jewel on Friday, April 22nd at 2:15 p.m. So if you guys want to mark that in your calendars, we'd love to see you guys out there. We'll be doing club recognitions, giving out the final budgets, and also our 2022 to 23 calendars will be given out because they're official. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Right again?
Yeah.
I think we covered everything.
And then graduation.
Is
on the 19th.
And our last Senate meeting is going to be during that graduation week. So
1 month.
if you have time, we would love to have you guys out. And that's pretty much it.
Excellent report. You all have been busy. Yeah. Hey, quick question for you. As far as the shadowing day or the shadowing that you all did, is that something that Dr. Mosier, that you implemented, or has this been going on for a long time? Or
well,
it was both Dr. Mosier and a Senate paired up to do this. The shadowing is actually new. It was like a compromise for this year, but everybody wants to continue this out from here on out. They really loved it. They said,
I heard in the past it was kind of like just a president swap between the two presidents, and nobody else was involved on student senate. But I think that this should definitely be continued, just because it just shows. I don't know. It was just cool just to see different positions and what they have to go through, and then us seeing that, visually was just great. So,
Right. Sounds like a wonderful experience. Excellent. Okay, any other questions for these two fine ladies?
I think they described the shadowing event excellent. And it is the first time. We did do the President Swap Days.
Yeah.
I believe the original idea for this was Rsvp. I think she is the one that said, well, because of the way the schedule is for our students on Student Senate and such, we need to push it more towards the end of the semester due to athletics, right? Because we have a really competitive athletic team in our women's basketball, and working with DJ and her schedule and the others that are on the team, we pushed it, towards the end of the semester. And the idea of the shadowing for all of Student Senate was an excellent idea. But definitely not mine. So thank you, Rsvp, and everyone who got that prepared, because it was great. It was great, I think, both for Cabinet and for our Student Senate.
Yeah, it was a brainchild of Enrico Wilcoxon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, any other questions, comments?
No other questions, but that was an excellent opportunity for the students to get to shadow the persons that we have here in our college. And they probably would not have had that opportunity had we not done something like this. They had no knowledge of what is entailed in running an organization like Kansas City Kansas Community College. I think that was excellent.
Yes, indeed.
I agree. Really exciting that they were able to see some of that behind the scenes, and I know personally that the finance talk isn't always so exciting, but it's an important part of running the organization. So glad you got to get exposed to some of those meetings as well. Well done.
Mm-hmm. And to get to experience 19 kind of kooky presidents, all in one meeting, which was a lot of fun, right?
I think it speaks to the organization somehow that everyone talking about this morning wants to give the credit to somebody else for getting it done. We play nice with others.
Indeed, we do.
I move acceptance of the report.
Yep. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Again, thank you so much for your report, ladies. We appreciate it. Okay, and now the president's report presented by Dr. Mosier.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So many great things taking place this month and last month. There's so many. Student Senate touched on it. It was actually hard to kind of pick and choose which ones to share this morning. But, I usually start with COVID numbers, and really excited to share that during this last during the last month, since March 15th, our last board meeting, we had 0 employees that were impacted by COVID that reported it to HR. If they're not feeling well, they may have stayed home, but no COVID incidents reported for our employees, which is wonderful. With our students, there were only 9 instances. And both of those were not these most previous 2 weeks, but the weeks prior, so the first 2 weeks of the 1 month section, so that's good. We continue to keep our eye out and check CDC and are on the Wyandotte County Health Department calls and looking at the BA2 factor that's on the coastlines, but for now I think we're doing really, really well. So. Appreciate everyone's hard work on that. Commencement, yay! I get to do commencement face-to-face this year, which is going to be terrific. And Dr. Myers and his crew are working on that, Registrar's Office, Student Affairs, Student Activities, you name it. So it's going to be a great event. We have the 2 o'clock and the 7 o'clock ceremony on May 19th. Just out of an abundance of caution, We are going to make this a masked event just because we're going to have so many people in close quarters. And we're just kind of coming off the trail of the COVID virus, and we don't want it to peak back up because of this event. Students, as they cross the stage, will be able to remove their masks. People speaking at the podium will be able to remove their masks, and we're still kind of fine-tuning what does that process look like in the COVID era of the transferring of the degree or certificate binder to the students. You know, traditionally you always line up and we all shake hands and do all that, but you know, we're look at a little bit safer procedure. It might be some fist bumps going on, but I'll know when Dr. Myers tells me what to do. So, but it's going to be a good event. We are definitely looking forward to that. Student Senate already talked about the Cabinet and Shadow Day, so that was good. This week, we also have the 2022 Kckcc Hall of Fame, and we have it live in this room, and I think we have about 100 seats that are sold out. But we are going to broadcast it online, so if you're interested in that, please contact the foundation office. Great recipients of this award this year. So Miss Irene Cadillo from downtown El Centro organization, Dr. Ben Hayes, Senator Pat Petty, and Mr. Benoit Butch Myers Ellison posthumously. So it's going to be a good event. Student housing is just rolling right along. Mike will have more information on that, I'm sure. And Dr. Myers, we looked at some numbers yesterday on how many people or students have sent in an application that includes the deposit fee. So that means that they're serious. So I'll let him share that information, but all good news. Also had a follow-up meeting with the new plant manager of the Hills Pet Nutrition, which is a manufacturing facility that's going to be built off of K7, actually in Leavenworth County. But during an event with LCDC that I go to, Leavenworth County Development Corporation, Tammy and I were introduced to the plant manager. It was originally a $250 million build out. It's now $300 million. Think of the price of steel and concrete and availability and all of that. So they're very anxious to work with us. They want to be up and running in a short term. So we're looking at what can we do with customized training right now, kind of focused on IMT, which is Industrial Maintenance Technician. Some classes on fluid dynamics, hydraulics, pneumatics, et cetera. So they're going to be a good partner and have chosen Kckcc as their educator of choice. So once again, another company looking to have us help train their workforce. So that will be good. I'm going to share just a little bit here with you. Let me get this going here. Yep. So what happens, I always lose my Zoom when I do that. If you'll stand by 1 second, please, sorry. All right. So you should see the latest ambient learning mural that we just put up. If you haven't been down the math science hallway, you definitely have to come by and take a look at it. And the detail in this is just amazing. So it's 2 local artists, because we do want to hire local and provide opportunities for them to share their art with us in the community. So as you walk through this, you can see it's really focused on math and a variety of sciences. So it's 3 wall sections long and just a beautiful piece.
Yes, it's amazing. After our policy meeting last week, I went down and looked at it, and if I were a student down on that wing, I would just be amazed, because it just kind of brings to mind the things that you're going to be learning in the classroom. So it is very impressive. That's a pretty picture, but you need to go see it in person.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, they did a beautiful job. As I drive by the south side of the main campus, going to my parking spot, if I come from State Avenue, I see about a 60 by 60 foot square canvas on the end of that humanities building. So we're probably going to have to do something with that, I think. But anyway, yeah, great work going on with ambient learning. Stop this. Last item, downtown progress is going well, but I'll save that for that report. But recently, I think it was just last week or maybe the week before, had a meeting with Mayor Gardner and the other 4 superintendents in our county, and some people from his staff to look at how do we engage more frequently and better in some scenarios to help students matriculate from elementary to middle to high school to the college to get their education to transfer or to go to work. So I think that's going to be a really a good committee that he's pulled together. So looking forward to that. It's a great conversation, a lot of talk around STEAM and how to get youth engaged in STEAM type disciplines and jobs at an early age. So we will probably host one of the first sessions. It's June maybe of next year. So we have some time for planning, but he does have some really good plans for education and such. Following the meeting, had an opportunity to visit with the mayor more about the downtown project and his support for that. So that is growing very well. And again, I'll have more details in a little while. And then he and I were invited to kind of co-present at the May 23rd Greater Kckcc Chamber Board meeting. So be a great opportunity to talk more about the project with the metro area and with the UG's support of this project to help make it happen. So with that, I will conclude my report and take any questions.
Move approval of the report.
Real quick, what does the acronym STEAM stand for? I heard you say STEAM.
Science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
So they've added the arts, okay, because yes. I'm familiar with the STEM, but not the STEAM. Okay, thank you so much.
Yes,
okay.
Quite welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Good things ahead.
Right, exactly. Thank you. We have a motion to approve the report. You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the Vice President of Academic Affairs report by Mr. Jerry Pope. Mr. Pope?
Thank you. I'll just take a couple of minutes to point out a few things that I'm kind of excited about this month. First, well, I guess this was last month. March was Women's History Month, and a shout out to the library staff for creating a display of several books in the collection. So I think that's really nice to celebrate these, these particular months. April happens to be National Poetry Month. It was established by the Academy of American Poets in '96, and the Writing Center is hosting a poetry reading contest and a writing contest. So there's some links in your board report if you're interested in visiting those.
Nice.
Also, I want to point out that every time around this time, the faculty director for the Center for Teaching Excellence, Mr. Tom Grady, sends out a survey to faculty about training that they feel they need in the upcoming year, and he uses the results of those surveys that he sends to faculty members, both full-time and adjunct, to spend time over the summer to program what he's going to do next year. So I just wanted to remind everyone, or have a shout out that, we are really trying to listen to what the faculty want. And of course, that's not the sum total of the training, but certainly he takes that into consideration as he plans those. And speaking of Mr. Grady, he was with 8 other educational developers. He created a professional development course called Teaching at a Community or Technical College. So this was with 8 other people through NISOD, the National Institute for Staff and Organizational Development. So we've got some really, kind of good things going on among our faculty and staff. The music department, so this year they went all wild. I'm trying to think of what term I want to say and not be too Southern in what I say. But for the Downbeat Student Awards, they actually won 15 awards this year. So that's really a record, certainly in the past few years for any school, not just community colleges, but we're talking about Berkeley School of Music, the University of North Texas, and some other high-end jazz institutions. So congratulations to the students and to the faculty, both full-time and adjunct, that are working with those students. So the NAIL technology program in the Education Center, they had a lot going on, so I like to call out a program that has some things going on. They had some visitors, including someone from the Board of Cosmetology visiting and looking around, so I know that's never not stressful. So congratulations to them for having that successful event and visit. The Fire Science program is one of the few programs in the Health Professions Department that doesn't have outside accreditation, and it may be the only one, so they took the first step. They were planning to do this pre-COVID, but one of the requirements was they had to attend a meeting in person, and we really couldn't do that during COVID. So this is the first year that they've been able to do that, so they're taking their first step to getting that national accreditation. So congratulations to them. Speaking of accreditation, just a shout out to the Health Professions Department, especially the Dean, Dr. Tiffany Boehm. The Mortuary Science accreditation starts on Monday. And then just soon after that, she's got another accreditation document that's due. So HLC wasn't enough. They have a lot of accreditation visits. So a shout out to that entire division for working on that.
That was one of my questions in that area, seeing the fire science, mortuary science, and respiratory with their accreditation or reaccreditation, then how does this play into the college's overall status with HLC? I mean, will they look at that at HLC, where we are with HLC as far as reaccrediting these?
They do look at professional accreditation and what is your standing with all of your professional accreditations, because if there's some that are at risk or on review, then that has them take a deeper look. Why are they on review? Can that trend matriculate kind of throughout the institution? Is it, that type of item? But they do request information on professional accreditation of programs and current standings.
So this is HLC.
Yeah. HLC does. Yeah, they watch the professional accreditation for all of our programs that hold that.
But for each of these institutions that are going to be providing accreditation to each program, do they look at where we are with HLC. I'm talking about from the
Yeah, I'm
other
sorry.
view.
Yeah,
Yes.
they do that as well.
Okay,
And we have to report to these professional accreditations what our HLC or our regional accreditor standing is.
Yes.
okay.
And when we went on probation, we had to report to these agencies
Yeah.
that we were on probation.
Okay,
But, yeah.
all right, thank you.
Sure. And then just one shout out to another staff member, Veronica Shipley, who's the administrative assistant to the Dean of Social and Behavioral Science and Public Services, Dean Cleon Wiggins back here. She completed the requirements for a bachelor's degree in from Baker University, so congratulations to Veronica for doing that. And at this point, I'll take any questions. I'll attempt an answer or come back later.
Any questions for Mr. Pope? Okay, excellent report as always, Mr. Pope. We certainly do appreciate you. You have a motion to approve the report, please?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again, Mr. Pope. Okay, next on the agenda is the Vice President, Student Affairs, Dr. Chris Myers, and, excuse me, interim.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning. So like my colleague, Mr. Pope, I'm very excited to share a lot of stuff with you, but I also want to acknowledge kind of like what Kia from Student Senate was saying is that Student Affairs and Enrollment Management tends to be a very eclectic group with different missions and different operations. So I want to first acknowledge the hardworking staff that are part of this team that have helped me on board during, there's never an ideal time to come to a new institution. There's not even a better time to start an institution than, we're coming from a COVID pandemic, but I cannot thank them enough for all the service they provided, not only to our students, but our faculty, our staff, and to the community. So it's been a real pleasure being a part of that. And I particularly want to mention that because, as I mentioned, it's impossible to mention everything that's going on there, but I certainly wanted to acknowledge the hard work they've been doing in terms of everything, helping support me in the institution as I get more familiar with it in this interim role. I want to make brief mention of enrollment. You see the spring enrollment numbers are part of our report. We still continue to hold steady, so to speak, when it comes to spring enrollment in terms of finishing up the semester. For summer and fall, the enrollment for continuing students started April 1st. Right now, we're showing trends where we're having more students enroll by the week compared to the previous year. I think it's still a little too early to tell how that impacts the overall fall enrollment, because one of the things that we do know is that students have much more interest in making sure they get their schedules lined up quickly compared to previous years. And so a lot of the rules that apply to early enrollment equal better enrollment overall, better success are really kind of out the window right now going through these next couple of years. So we'll keep monitoring on that. And for the next board report, we'll provide more detailed information. Also specifically related to that is new students, so applications for admission into all of our programs. They are trending upward also compared to the previous year, but not up to the levels of previous application years. And so like that, we're still kind of in that period where people are still applying, trying to make their final decisions. And so we will bring more detailed information in terms of applications, in terms of programs, who's admitted, who's not admitted, who's confirmed at the next board meeting. And so as we go forward between May up to August, we'll be able to do better try to provide some forecasting of what the actual enrollment's going to look like this upcoming fall. The big lessons, we're trying to be very optimistically cautious because we just don't know how everyone's reacting, because every year since 2020 is a new year in terms of how students make their college choices. And I'll speak to a little of that in my future presentation today. Dr. Mosier did mention commencement. This is something that is co-chaired by myself and Ms. Teresa Holliday, the campus registrar, but not only does it include almost every student affairs office, but it includes facilities and finance folks and faculty folks from all across the board. We started our Rsvp process last week. As of right now, we have 70 students signed up for the 2 o'clock session, 75 students signed up for the 7 p.m. session. Previous years, we have about 150 graduates walk across the floor, so we're going to keep it so far so good. In terms of total Rsvps, we allow students to request up to 6 tickets and also make an additional request for tickets. Right now, our capacity for both events is at 700. So we set kind of an artificial capacity of 2,000 in the facility in terms of a head count. We could go up to 2,500. And so I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to accommodate all the students and families' guests as long as we keep pushing them between now and our deadline of April 29th, which is the same deadline for making sure your name's included in the commencement book as a candidate for RSVPs. So there's a lot of work happening between now in terms of getting stuff set up, making, like Dr. Mosier mentions, like how are we going to handle COVID during these times, or excuse me, handle commencement, knowing that we still have to minimize contact and be safe. So there'll probably be a lot of visual fist bumps, right? But you know, there's always next year, especially for our centennial year, which I think is going to be a tremendous opportunity for Kckcc to really fully celebrate commencement. But you know, the commencement committee's charge mainly is to center the experience around the students and their guests. And so that's really the primary thing that we're doing as we're trying to adjust these things and figure out what we need to make modifications for in-person commencement ceremony, which might stay for good, and you know, also things that we're doing just from a safety perspective. Dr. Mosier mentioned the housing applications, and I was getting excited because I thought he was looking for me for a number. We have a very simple number today. We're up to 100 applications since we started the application process on April 1st. So with a 250-bed facility, we're at 40% occupancy in terms of application rates, which I think is a really good sign going forward in terms of the interest. And predominantly we actually have more non-athletes right now submitting the application than athletes, which I think speaks to the tremendous demand and you know the support that you as board members did pushing for this project. It's always, you know, kind of dangerous trying to determine if they will actually come, but I'm pretty confident they're coming right now based on the overall application rate. So very excited about that. I also want to mention Department of Athletics. We made mention of that right now. All the spring seasons, golf, baseball, and softball are finishing up their season. Baseball and softball is very competitive in the conference right now. Weather's getting good, so you have the opportunity to go out and watch and support them before they get into their districts and tournament competitions. I would highly encourage that because they are actually, we believe this is the first time baseball's been ranked in the top 20. As far as we can tell back, it's definitely the first time baseball and softball have been ranked in the top 20 at the same time. So that speaks to the commitment of our students. Dr. Pope, or Mr. Pope mentioned Women's History Month. That was also something where you can imagine a lot of the student affairs and enrollment management offices had different types of programming. One that I mentioned at the previous meeting was the program that the Military and Veterans Center was doing for the cosmetology students to provide free services. That was something that was so well received, even though they had smaller numbers, that the Military and Veterans Center is going to continue doing that with the partner they did, the community group they partnered with in the cosmetology department. But as you can see through the report, you can see all the different types of programs that are coming out of counseling and advocacy, student activities, and all those things related to Women's History Month. I also want to mention our Career Connected Learning Career Services. So we had our first Higher Blue Career Fair April 7th here for primary focus around tech programs with over 50 potential employers. On tomorrow, the 20th, right? So the 19th? Yeah, thanks. On the 20th is our main career fair at the main campus from 10 to 11. And we're at the point where we're having to, I don't say we didn't have to turn away potential employers, but we've had to go find more tables and more spacing for them due to that interest. So we're very excited about that. Handshake, our career services platform, is right now being released. So we have about 200 students, or sorry, not 200 potential employers we've collected over the last year or so who are getting invitations to post jobs into that system for students. And there will be a full launch for students on May 1st in terms of the first phase in terms of having the job placement board. But there is tremendous other things that we'll be working on related to career preparation, interviewing, and things like that, which that platform will help deliver to our campus. And then finally, I do want to make note of a special recognition. Andrea Wilson, records coordinator, she's in the registrar's office. She received the 2022 National Institute for Staff and Organizational Development Excellence Award. So we're quite proud of her accomplishment, and we've celebrated that. But I also think it's worth mentioning to the trustees. And with that, that's my report, and I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions for Dr. Myers? Comments?
I say excellent report. I'm not seeing any questions right now. One thing to add about student housing, we have 100 applicants at this time. Probably about about 40 are athletes. Our athlete and participation in student housing, or who will be required to stay in student housing if they are on a full ride scholarship to the institution, is about 140. So then we can add another 100 to that 100 that we already have. So in essence, once we get athletes in and registered and make sure that they get in on time, that puts us at about 200. We have 257 rentable beds, I believe. 6 are RAs. So 200, about 250, 251 beds available. And we may fill up, have to take a waiting list, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, what a nice problem.
Yeah. And can I ask, are you or Tammy going to just touch on the welcome back or we want you back program? Doesn't matter who, but just where we are in the
I'm
process.
happy to report on that. So what Dr. Mosier is referring to is we know there's lots of students that have stopped out for Kckcc students have stopped out either for multiple reasons for the pandemic, in addition to encouraging all of our students to enroll early. So one of the things that we started doing, and we had a meeting last week with the cabinet to discuss this, is how do we provide some form of incentives to former students in terms of marketing to the community to say, we want you back, and then providing some form of financial support, whether it be a small scholarship, to do that. So we're currently evaluating that. Specifically, what we're evaluating is the potential number of students who are out there that have stopped out and have so many hours, and then being able to present much more of a structured presentation because anytime you do provide a scholarship or some form of tuition assistance, right, it comes at a cost. So what we're doing is doing that modeling to show that it would be a return on the investment to invest in that engagement to drive more enrollment, and specifically also ways that we can incentivize current students to enroll primarily before mid-June, because we know that after mid-June that it gets much more problematic to find good schedules, build those things, and so knowing that we want students to have the best experience possible and stay on progress to a degree, we're looking at these different ways that we can incentivize them. And ultimately, from an enrollment management perspective, it's a collaboration between finance and marketing, because it's part of that we all have to work together. But these small investments, these small strategic investments can pay off dividends in terms of overall enrollment and FTE and degree progression. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, right. As for example, if a student is lacking 15 credit hours to finish an associate's degree, if we give them a scholarship for 3 credit hours or a free class, that may incentivize them to go ahead and take those other 12, which would be revenue generating for the institution, where right now, it is probably not revenue generating with that particular student. So it's just good outreach.
It's good outreach. In addition, it provides a credential for them too, which also serves our community. So that way they're able to fulfill the promise of higher education. So it's a very exciting time to be working on these from a strategic perspective, very much so.
Yeah.
It sounds like a win for both the college and the student.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention, because I saw in the Student Accessibility and Support Services report that they are going to give a presentation to the Senate regarding animals on campus, and that is something that we're working on, and we appreciate the cabinet and you, Dr. Myers, for your input on that, because we want to make sure that we are very inclusive and doing the right thing when it comes to animals on campus. We had a long conversation about that in our policy committee, and before we move forward, we want to make sure that we have all of the information, that we're doing the right thing. Probably, according to Christina, we probably need to get some legal information as well about that. And then one other comment on the International Student Service, because I'm, how I feel about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I saw in the inclusion that I think it said maybe in a long time, but I think this is the first time that we've ever provided a room for prayer for our Muslim students and employees. during Ramadan.
Right.
So that's something that I can report, you know, ACCT, that we are doing something big on that.
Yeah.
So that's great.
And thank you for mentioning that, Trustee Sutton. I'm really quite proud of our staff in the admissions office. Emily Britton, who is our International Student Services Coordinator, she's been with the campus for quite some time. You talk about, you know, organically building an experience for students. They identified that need for prayer space for Ramadan, and they found space within the admissions
Yes.
office to accommodate that. The exciting thing is we talk about our overall inclusion and equity. Inclusion and equity plans, how do we build that out so it's much more broader than within the admissions office. So I commend them on their efforts, but it's something that where we need more collective energy and thoughts towards that, because striving from that. I also mentioned briefly, you mentioned the AMO on campus policy. So the Student Accessibility and Support Services people have already presented to Senate about that.
Okay.
One thing that had came up during that policy development was an omission related to therapy animals. And so one of the things that we've been able to do, because we do allow therapy animals with certain restrictions in housing. It's actually required by ADA, and also has some housing and urban development implications if you don't provide that. Mm-hmm. And so based on that outreach, like you've mentioned, we've been able to work with Christina and my cabinet colleagues on the policy to make sure that we included language specific to therapy animals, which is much different than a service animal from that perspective. So thank you for mentioning that, and I think it's great the more that we outreach this, that we can provide totally inclusive policies.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Dr. Myers? Okay, thank you, Dr. Myers. Excuse me. Next is the Vice President's Strategic Initiatives and Outreach Report by Dr. Bartunik.
Did we approve Dr. Myers' report?
Oh, excuse me.
If
Yes,
not, I
yes.
will make a motion that we do so.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Report is accepted. Thank you, Trustee Ash. Next is the Vice President's Strategic Initiatives and Outreach Report delivered by Dr. Tammy Bartunik. Dr. Bartunik?
She is standing behind the podium, by the way.
Thank you. Yes, good morning. I actually
She
am
is.
standing. This is as tall as I can get, unless I have a stool. So perhaps next month, Trustee Ash, I can have a little stool back here.
Okay.
So good morning.
Good morning.
Wanted to point out just a couple of things. We have started to have meetings with the Historic Preservation Design Board, which is a committee that we put together based upon the requirements from our certificates of appropriateness for the downtown properties. This board consists of members of the Landmarks Commission, Department of Planning and Urban Design, the project itself, so I sit on this board, Wyandotte County Museum, Wyandotte Nation of Kansas, and downtown shareholders. And the purpose of this board is to evaluate historic elements from the 7th Street Church and affirm that those elements are embedded into the new facility in an appropriate and meaningful way. So we've had 3 or 4 meetings already, and actually today we are taking a field trip to go to the church. So, and many of the members haven't been in the church probably since it was maybe actually in use, some of the members. So it'll be quite a field trip today.
Take your hard hat.
Building safety.
We have hard hats, yes sir, we have flashlights. It will be swept prior to our arrival by the police, and closed-toed shoes and masks because of all the mold. Yes,
All
sir.
right.
And as a follow-up, we've been talking about the ability to have individuals update their own website content, and Omar Brennis, our web architect's been working on getting that training completed for either faculty or staff that are identified in their department or division whom would like to have abilities to update their own content on their division or department website. So far as of March, when we wrote this update, 36 faculty and staff members have attended the training and are able now to update their own content. And because of the interest in this, we have had to extend and offer additional training classes. So we're super excited. And people are actually making the edits. They are embracing this. So we've had at least 15 different edits already made by these 36 to maybe now 40 individuals I have had this content training. The COVID-19 website has been completely updated and revamped. We've archived some of the old information, thank goodness, and made it easier to find and locate using more visual icons. And I provided the link in the report if you'd like to go visit that. We've talked about student housing already. The student housing webpage has been updated and revamped as well with new information. So it looks nice, it's clean, it's updated, everything is there that any potential student would need to have to move into our beautiful new housing. And then I have a couple of things to share with you on the screen, so I'll ask Randy if you wouldn't mind. We have 2 new commercials to show you. We've updated all of our commercials for summer and fall enrollment, so I'm just going to share 2. And then I have the second series of the downtown videos to show you.
Learn an in-demand technical trade fast. At Kansas City, Kansas Community College, you will receive hands-on experience and be prepared for a new career in as little as a year. Earn a technical certificate right here near home and learn from experts with real-world experience in culinary arts, cosmetology, cybersecurity, electrical technology, and more. Kckcc is proud to provide hands-on training and personalized attention to students. Choose your career and enroll today. Summer classes begin June 6th. Enroll today at kckcc.edu.
Expect a new experience at Kansas City, Kansas Community College. From upgraded classrooms, technology, and study spaces to brand new student housing on campus, we've transformed our campus for you. Kckcc is the first step toward your dream career, and we're right here in your backyard. Kckcc is proud to provide hands-on personal attention to you. We'll meet your needs online or in person. Do it your way, all at little or no cost to you. Enroll today at kckcc.edu.
So you'll see that we also intermixed masks on and masks off, because when we were doing the shooting, we weren't sure at that point if we'd be mask on or mask off, so we took a chance and did some with no masks. Yes. So it worked out. And then we will, if we stay mask off, we'll, of course, re-record all of that and have it rolling, for summer and fall later on. And then our second series of the downtown video, if you recall, we're working on probably a 4-part series about the downtown project. The first we shared was it last month or the month prior, about what is this project, just explaining what the project is. Through feedback we've gotten from a lot of our conversations, people are asking, well, how in the heck are you going to pay for this? Don't raise my taxes, right? So the second series is, how in the heck are we paying for this?
The Kansas City, Kansas Community Education, Health, and Wellness Center is a public-private partnership like no other in the country. Founded in 1923 in downtown Kckcc, Kansas City, Kansas Community College has proudly served Wyandotte County and the surrounding region for nearly 100 years. Returning to our roots, Kckcc is partnering with select organizations to build the Kckcc Community Education, Health, and Wellness Center, a mere 2 blocks from where the college began in 1923. With a vision to provide hope, end generational poverty, improve the quality of life, and increase the socioeconomic mobility of our residents living in and around downtown Kansas City, Kansas, this center will provide much-needed education, technical training, health, wellness, financial literacy, and other important support services. To accomplish this vision, Kckcc is partnering with the YMCA, Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network, Swope Health, Kckcc Public Schools, and Community America Credit Union. When speaking about the project in public, a common question is, how will this bold endeavor be funded? Each partner will own their own physical spaces in the facility
and are part of the funding equation, with Kckcc owning approximately 60% of the facility. Pledging $10 million to help fund Kckcc's portion of the project, the college, like the other partners, will fundraise to raise the remaining capital through a $70 million capital campaign.
I have been involved in the planning of this project and a supporter since its inception. The Board of Trustees has reviewed the budgets and agreed that the college will not raise the mill levy to build or maintain the center.
Building upon the $10 million Kckcc has committed towards this project, the Kckcc Foundation continues to work with the greater community to secure the remaining funding through our Centennial Path campaign. Purposely designed to provide hope for the future and break the chains of generational poverty, Kckcc and our partners need your help. If interested in helping make this bold vision, a once-in-a-lifetime project a reality, please contact the Kckcc Foundation for more information. Thank you.
Tammy, how's that being used?
Right now, it's a launch today, and we'll have it on our website, on the foundation website, and we'll use it as we are presenting to other organizations. We'll do a social media campaign and push this out as well. So we will widely distribute this piece. And also the Downtown President's Advisory Council, we'll share it with them, and they'll share it out with their networks as well.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well done.
Well done.
Yeah. Trustee Brown did a good job too.
Yes.
Yes, she did.
Yes, she
I was
did.
just sharing that with Dr. Mosier, yes.
Excellent, yeah.
It was a great choice.
Thank you.
Of all the
Thank you.
trustees, and that's not a slap on any of us, but she was a good choice to represent us.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, any questions for Dr. Bartunik or any other comments?
Move approval of the report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Bartunik.
Thank you.
Next is, excuse me, next is the Chief Financial Officer report delivered by Mr. Michael Beach.
I am here to provide the real exciting information based on Trustee Isnar's comments earlier. Grateful to be with you today. You have my report in front of you. I'll just go through it, a few things to highlight quickly. As our budget process for fiscal year 2023 continues, Dr. Mosier reported on some of that information in the earlier special meeting. We've reached a point where our strategic opportunities, new asks, this is the items that we budget each year, and we want to take into consideration for funding. This is an involvement where we get involved the President's Extended Cabinet, so we have representatives from all of the Senates as well as the President's Cabinet in the room. We've evaluated and prioritized the information that was put forward relating to these strategic new asks. So that part of the process has been complete. The next step will be to have a conversation relating to those new asks with Dr. Mosier, and then take it to the President's President's Cabinet for review and selection. Right now, we're sitting right at about the budgeted dollar amount that we've typically budgeted for these strategic new asks, which is about $1.2 million. The new student housing project that has been reported is moving along nicely. The interior work continues to move along at a great pace. As we walk through it today, those that are going through it, you'll be able to see that most of the interior walls are painted. They're still doing a little bit of sheetrock downstairs in the basement. That was the last area to go into. Flooring is going in, cabinets are going in. The apartments are starting to look nice. The doors are getting hung and going in all of the apartments. So the interior work is really taking great shape. The landscaping work is underway. As we approach the building, you'll see that sidewalks are going in and curb and gutter are being laid for the lane, for the front drive and lane that's going in. We'll be starting the parking lot here before too long. That's the old parking lot that goes off to the north. That'll be all completely redone as part of the project. They're also excavating out the amphitheater, and so that's starting to take shape. It was kind of fun to walk around yesterday and see things getting graded off, and that amphitheater starting to take shape. Some information to report, just so the board is aware. We were informed last week that there has been an unexpected delay in the arrival of the countertops. This is about a 2-week delay. Apparently, a number of them were damaged, and so they had to be returned, and it's delaying the countertops from being shipped. Also, the hardware that's going to go into the doors, it's all electronic, and that has been delayed, and we don't know exactly what the timing is. We're anxious to see if we can get an update on that. However, the promises that we have is that the door hardware will go on in a traditional sense if that's necessary in order to get the dorms to be open. So there may be a period of time, depending on the delay, where door locks may be the traditional lock and key that the students will have to do, but the commitment is to get the new housing open and available for students, even if that electronic hardware does not arrive in time to be installed. Also, just by way, we've been talking about this for the last couple of months, but we have one final draw left to completely draw down our higher education emergency relief funds, or what is referred to as HERF funds. And that draw will go in here at the end of this month or the first week of May, but we'll make the May 12th deadline for all of those, for all of those expenses. Our bookstore continues to offer alternative food options for the deli. We did get the RFP out on Friday for the selection of the new deli, so we're excited to see the responses that will come back in relation to that RFP. Our graduation regalia has arrived for the students and is available for them to be picked up. Our central scheduling continues to make progress with their internal processes in order to make scheduling more efficient. And we've also recognized, as we start to come out of COVID, an uptick in non-college sponsored events. Well, even an uptick in college sponsored events on campus, for that matter. So it's really good to see that these events coming back to campus and bringing people here to our beautiful facilities. Our facilities teams continue to do the updates. They're still updating one of the science labs from last year. They're also updating the classrooms in the math hallway now, down where that mural is. So those classrooms will be updated. The wall shakers will be moved out, what we refer to the wall shakers, the radiant heaters and coolers on the walls. And units will be put up into the ceiling that are a lot quieter. It also allows for more space in those rooms, and then they'll be updated with technology and furniture. So we're excited to see those and see this project continue to move on. It's a great initiative for the college, and again, as DJ reported, she was really impressed as I walked her through the halls and showed her what some of the old classrooms looked like versus what we're trying to do with these updated classrooms. Walked her into one of the science labs and showed her the old lab versus the new labs and some of these classrooms. And so it was a good opportunity for her to kind of see the improvements that are being made on campus as well. And our college police continue to just provide wonderful support for the campus and providing for our public safety as well. In the way of financial statements, I'll just draw your attention to the monthly financial summary. Our total assets at the end of March, $132.7 million. This was a slight decrease over the previous month by $978,000. Our total liabilities, just over $44 million. This was a decrease of $1.5 million over the previous month. This is largely due to making a debt payment. This is the time of year where we are making our debt payments and the principal and interest on those payments. So that's really the contributing factor to that decrease in liabilities. Net position stands at $88.7 million. This is just a slight decrease over the previous month of $520,000. Total revenues year to date, $73.2 million. We received $7.7 million in new revenues during the month, and I'll get into the details of those here in just a minute. Our operating expenses year to date at $57.6 million, and as Trustee Bruni reported, This is about 7.7% lower than what we would expect to be expended on a budget, on a year-to-date budget to actual comparison. So we're, once again, we're tracking very nicely on our expenses, which again, and I've reported this before, but it really proves and shows, I think, to the administration of the Board of Trustees that zero-based budgeting for the college is working the way it was intended to work, to bring more awareness to expenditures and more accountability at the departmental level relating to the expenditures of the college, which is a tribute to everyone who has grasped this concept. It's not always an easy thing to grasp, but they've grasped it and they're doing a wonderful job, I think, managing their expenses year to year. Our net increase in net position, our total increase in net position year to date, 15.5 million. This is a little lower than, this is a little bit of a decrease over the previous month, year to date, which is expected because while we did take in a lot of revenues because of financial aid disbursements and COVID disbursements to students, our expenses were higher than typically normal. You can see here on the monthly burn, 8.8 million or just almost $8.9 million in total expenses for the month, for the monthly burn, which is more than our burn, but most of this is due to financial aid and COVID, as well as other expenses. I'll get into that here in a minute. Relating to the decrease in total assets, this is largely due to revenues received less cash, operating cash that was paid out, as well as the payment of liabilities for the college during the period and other accrued expenses. The college's total year-to-date cash position, as it stands right now, is 14.9 million, better than last year at this same time. This is largely due to the COVID monies that we've been drawing down this year to cover past losses and lost revenues to the college. Revenue received during the month, as indicated, 7.7 million. This is largely due to federal student COVID relief monies that were paid directly to them. We drew down about 2.7 million. We also drew down 3.4 million of institutional COVID funds, and we received a tax payment during the month of 1.6 million. Operating expenses during March, 8.9 million as indicated. This consists this is a little bit larger than expectation. But given the timing of the month and paying debt service and some of the other expenses, it's what we would expect it to be, even though it's a little larger than our straight burn rate. Expenses mainly consisted of 1.8 million for COVID relief disbursements to students, another 1.8 million for debt payments, and 3.7 million for salaries, wages, and benefits, making up largely the large portion of those expenses. The college's overall net position is indicated increased slightly by $520,000 for the month. This increase is the net result of cash less expenses and liabilities paid. 1.1 million year-to-date net position is the result of expenses, including a large debt payment exceeding revenues for the month. That is pretty much my report. Does anybody have any questions on the finances or the facilities of the college?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Beach. May I have a motion to approve the report, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again. Appreciate you, Mr. Beach. Next on the agenda is the Chief Human Resources Officer report delivered by Ms. Christina McGee. Ms. McGee?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
We'll just give some brief highlights with regards to what's going on in the human resources area. So we are embarking on another journey to update some HRIS system functionality. And so we're excited about this particular functionality because we'll be able to have the opportunity to really kind of manage our positions. And so we'll have some ability to manage our vacancies, but also to run reports on how our our vacancies are impacting position budgets, along with seeing how when positions are vacant, how much that's costing us in terms of the length of time that they're vacant. So we're working also with the finance department, because some of this has to do with forecasting some budgets and including that into the system and the position management. But we think this will be a really good tool for the college to use as we look at positions across the college, vacancies, as well as any new positions that we incorporate as well. So working on that, hope to have that functionality finalized probably within around mid-May or so. So we have several meetings scheduled this month to update that function. Along with that, we are working on the luncheon, the employee recognition luncheon that's scheduled for May 6th. And so we certainly want to extend the invite to, but we will do it more formally, but extend the invite to the Board of Trustees. So we've been working on planning that event. Also, we are moving forward and we have scheduled out for the year our supervisor meetings. And in those meetings, we'll just be discussing some critical items that supervisors need to know. We'll also be taking feedback from supervisors to identify what they would like to hear from college administration. But we also have a training component included in those supervisor meetings. And so for the first one in April, we're going to be working on workplace communication with supervisors. How our supervisors communicate with employees really impacts our culture, but also employee engagement. And so we want to make sure that we are training our supervisors with regards to the best practices for workplace communication. So we'll be doing that this April or on the 28th, and so we're planning for that. The Diversity or the Equity and Inclusion Council has worked to create a final draft of the charter as well as DEI priorities that will help us to establish what our priorities are and place action items going forward in terms of those priorities. And so worked on that to finalize. We also had a meeting yesterday. And then lastly, I'd like to note that the art gallery had an exhibit, Experiencing India. It's my understanding that that was really well received. And it was co-curated by a faculty member, staff member, as well as a community member, but 32 pieces of work from students. And so we're excited about that, and I'm looking forward to form our future art gallery exhibits. So that concludes my report. I will answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments for Ms. McGee?
Not a question, but just a comment. I'm excited to hear that we're looking into the position management, position budgeting, position control systems. I know take a lot of work to set up, but they do make a really big impact on the ability to plan going forward once they're implemented. So good to hear that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We are excited about it.
You may have a motion to approve the report, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. McGee.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, Chief Information Officer report delivered by Mr. Peter Gabriel. Mr. Gabriel?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Try to squeeze my laptop in here, not knock things down. You have my report, and there's just a few things I wanted to highlight off of it. I think I'll just hold on to it before I knock this mic down. A little change on the Highland perceptive content that was mentioned in my report. It was scheduled to kick off on 4/13, and they decided to combine that meeting with the meeting on the 21st, so that project will actually start on the 21st. And the first part of that project will be developing a new test environment for that application, so there won't be any work done on our actual production environment at that time. And then along with that upgrade, we have a few others that are in the pipeline, including a major Ellucian colleague server migration and upgrade, and KRS business objects and Synoptics. I know most of you won't know what those names are, but Synoptics is a program that the business office uses, and then KRS Business Objects is one that our institutional effectiveness uses for reporting. So, and then, oh, Trustee Ash stepped away. This one's kind of for him. Samantha Landau in Information Services coordinated a transition of our college police cell phones over to what's called the FirstNet network. And that FirstNet is a nationwide wireless broadband communications platform, and I'm reading this, dedicated to America's first responders and public safety community. It's a highly secure communications platform providing reliability to public safety agencies and first responders, helping them make faster and better decisions to keep themselves and the public safe. And FirstNet is different from other carriers in that it's a dedicated public safety core that routes the First Traffic network. So to boil that down, it's a separate network besides AT&T, T-Mobile, the normal cellular network. So in the event of some emergency that the regular cellular networks are busy or overloaded, our college police phones will stay on the FirstNet network, which will keep them in constant contact and be able to make phone calls, send data back and forth. They won't see an interruption as with normal cellular lines. So thanks to Samantha for coordinating all that and getting all the cell phones moved over. And then this last one is not really college related, but I just wanted to mention it because I caught it on the news last night. And it was a very short piece on the news, but there was a report that the unified government systems were hacked or possibly attacked over the weekend, but they did not list, what was compromised or what applications or anything like that, or if any actual data was taken. So just so that everyone's aware that something here local to us has been attacked and possibly compromised. So other than that, that's really all the updates I have. We have a lot of projects that are going to start here in the next month, so we'll be busy. Oh, and I did want to mention one other thing, sorry. There was a comment from my network engineer that made me laugh this morning, actually, listening to Mike's report on the Centennial Hall. He sent me a message in Teams, and he says, that day the core network switches came in, and he sent me a note, and he says, I think this is starting to get real. And so I said, well, by the room that we have that is cram-packed with equipment, it's been real for me for quite a while. But we did receive our wireless access points, the indoor wireless access points yesterday. And the only other hardware that we're missing that it's not delayed because of some supply chain issue is the actual network switches that go in the closets on each floor. And those are slated to ship, I think, on the 29th of this month. So we'll have them here pretty soon. So, but other than that, I'd be glad to take any questions you might have.
Sure. Real quick, Mr. Gabriel, regarding, excuse me, the recent or alleged cyber activity, what additional diligence or action are you and your staff considering or maybe have discussed or even slated to discuss? Just kind of curious as to how you all are approaching it.
There's a few things. We're looking at some using Endpoint Manager, which is a product through Microsoft that we can better manage the laptops or any devices that are off of our network. One of the first things that's on my calendar every day is to check our security page to see what vulnerabilities are out there. We get, I think the last I looked this morning, there was 174 possible vulnerabilities listed for different things. I mean, it's anything from updating Google Chrome, Firefox, which devices need updates. It really lists a lot of content that we can look at. Some changes that we can make to secure our devices. So that's a daily task that I look at to keep track of that. So.
Right. Definitely. Okay. Just, I was just curious, because I know that organizations, not just governmental organizations and institutions are kind of stepping up their security game and such. And I figured that you all would be too, as usual. So thank you for that. And, stay on top of it because these are kind of some crazy times, if you will, with respect to digital security. So. Yep. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Gabriel? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the report, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. This takes us to the portion of the agenda where we will address unfinished business. First item is the Harvard CTE report presented by Dr. Chris Myers.
Well, good morning again.
Morning.
Can you see the presentation on the screen? Not yet.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. As Mr. Gabriel was talking about housing being real, I'm sorry, housing's not real until you get your first noise complaint from a resident. That's when you know it's really there. So this is a follow-up to the previous meeting, a request to have a report of the Harvard Career and Technical Education Data Project. And so I'm happy to present this to you. And from a quick objective, what I want to achieve today is provide a summary of the report's findings. Also ground it with context related to COVID-19 because there's lots of things that have changed since this report was initiated, and also provide some starting framework for recommended steps going forward. So to get everyone back up to speed, the Harvard University Center for Educational Policy Research, this is a project that's done through Harvard, and specifically they've released, they've started a fellowship specifically around community and technical education. I do want to acknowledge that the majority of the work that I will be speaking towards was done by previous Kckcc employees, specifically Dr. Mahir Chan and Dr. Delphi Wilson, who were part of the first cohorts, the distinction to be the first cohorts of fellows that were in this program. And overall, the project the Harvard data project is to provide capacity for more data-driven decision-making, sharing, and collaboration, so that universities and institutions and community colleges and the whole entire higher education sector can better articulate the story of what's happening on campuses and how to support students. Specifically to the project that Drs. Chan and Wilson did, their project was to understand the achievement gaps of Kckcc students, enhance the institutional use of data to make decision-making, and also to understand and increase equally what are the success rates of underrepresented students. And so a lot of this was foundational work to make an assessment of where Kckcc is in terms of measuring equity measures, but also to provide those foundational steps going forward. Knowing that equity is something that is, I don't want to say challenging to articulate and measure, but complex. When we think about all the different elements that go into diversity, inclusion, and equity, but ultimately providing that foundation so that we can continue to align this with campus strategic planning, enrollment plans, and likewise. I do want to ground this with a few assumptions before I start showing some of the results of the data. And some of these assumptions were things that were existing in 2019, 2020 as this project got kicked off, or rather well known. Often when we think about retention and degree persistence and degree attainment, the notion that increasing more students into the pipeline, enrolling more students, regardless of identity or representation, does not really it has impact, but doesn't have a direct impact on retention and graduation rates, right? Because while they're still here, there's still a lot of things that happen in terms of doing that. Reason why I mention this is one thing that we have known for quite some time in post-secondary education is the model was unsustainable in terms of like rising cost of tuition, community, local, state support. From that perspective, is that the needs for students were growing far greater than we could finance it, and so many institutions have had to rely on growing enrollment by bringing in more students, but we know that bringing more students in without enhancing the experience so that they can receive that degree actually is cost prohibitive, or actually hurts the bottom line, which we kind of mentioned before. It's very well known that the cost of losing a student can be much more than bringing in a student, right? And so how we balance that is very important. The other thing is that even before the pandemic, career choice and college choice was in flux due to the increasing cost. I'm sure you've read many materials where the public perception of the value of higher education has gotten diminished over the number of years. And frankly, the increasing indebtedness to students has become quite problematic, as you have seen in the news, in terms of that we have students who are graduating from all levels of education with way more substantial debt than they ever had before when compared to inflationary factors and things like that. And the other thing, I mentioned this a little previously about why it's complex, is a lot of the research that that established research and notions that we use in terms of developing and planning retention activities and persistent activities is based often on single factors, not speaking to the interdimensionality of our students today. And what I mean by that is just to try to provide support or resources based on research that's just solely based on age, race, ethnicity, gender, doesn't take into account all the ways those type of identities intersect and really unique students. And so that's always been a limitation. And frankly, the notion of researching insecurities, whether it be financial insecurity, housing insecurity, food insecurity, like the efforts of the food bank, is still relatively new in terms of showing the overall impact. We know it has an impact, but how we factor all these things into how we measure equity is very important. It's more than just the numbers you see at the end of a semester report or on a Board of Regents report or something like that, because we have to think of how all these things intersect with a lot of the activities we've talked about already today. A couple other things I think are worth noting when we think about preparation and COVID. A lot of the things that have impacted underrepresented student populations more has actually became even worse. And so I picked up a few things here. The data is from the College Board, as we know that enrollments continue to decrease at paces that have paces through the pandemic that were very problematic. Retention. But I want to highlight that last set of bullets there, because I think it's very critical as we talk about returning students to campuses and returning students to Kckcc. It's harder now. There's many more challenges. For example, 53% of all freshmen last year indicated they spend more time on class material. It's challenging to be in a disruptive online environment when you're used to or thriving in those on-campus environments. 33%, over a third of the students nationally now have to increase the number of hours they work. That impacts their ability to be successful in the classroom. 1 in 5 students, I think this is really something that's really incredible. 1 in 5 students now have additional caregiving responsibilities, whether it be a child or a family member or elder. That puts a big impact on work-life balance and achieving student success. And 14% received a financial aid reduction in terms of the type of financial aid they've been able to receive going through the pandemic. The other thing that I think is very important to note is something that we are all concerned about is the preparation of students coming into the post-secondary sector into Kckcc because of the disruptive nature at the high school levels and things like that. This is actual data that is the total math placement scores that have been administered by Kckcc over the last 4 fiscal years. So this includes all prospective students and individuals who have taken the test, not necessarily students who have enrolled. But I still think it's a good indicator. So you can see, like we've mentioned before, that math placement scores are dropping, are continuing to dropping compared to previous levels. Even going into 2022, we're on average 5 points lower than they were in 2019, which suggests that we're going to have more students that are going to need developmental courses and not be able to place at that. So that's going to put an impact on those things. Another thing I want to mention really quickly in terms of the study that Drs. Delphi and Chan did. They did a very excellent job of noting some of the limitations to the current reporting structures that exist at Kckcc or were in the process of being improved. In terms of using inconsistent data standards, definitions in terms of reporting. There's been a lot of tremendous effort that I'm pleased to see in terms of the last couple of years of making sure that we're using the same data standards that we use to report to iPads, like Dr. Mosier was mentioning earlier today, to the federal level, and how we apply those to specific majors and other things that we are not necessarily things that we report externally, but are important to track also. And so how do we build that system so that we can further leverage the significant investment of things like the Ellucian Student Information System and data reporting so that we can share information across the board. But it's something that is part of a limitation of any time you do a study like this. So 2 results. This chart here is a brief summary of essentially what the report was trying to achieve. How do we measure Kckcc compared to equity measurements? And so I'll briefly talk about this chart, and I do want to make, this thing is a synthesis of information from the Harvard report, also data that was pulled from the most recent Kansas Board of Regents data. And where you see blank cells, it doesn't mean that we're not reporting it or missing it. It's just something that, for ease of simplicity, it made more sense to put it all in one chart. So specifically to the first column, in terms of achievement measures, the percentages you see there are how Kansas City, Kansas Community College enrollment compares to the general Wyandotte County population. So as you can see, we enroll more than 8% females than are represented in the total population of Wyandotte County, 4% students over the age of 25. And even though we are one of the largest compared to peers in community colleges and stuff like that in terms of inclusion, we still have ways to go in terms of the campus student body representing the entire population of Wyandotte County in certain segments. Compared to, so that second column is most recently 2020 Board of Regents system data. So this is all the community colleges that are part of the Kansas Board of Regents. As you can see, we enroll 2% more female students than our peers within the system. And then those other 2 columns are related to actual outcomes in terms of graduation rate and fall to spring retention rates based on the level of detail that we could translate to the actual report. So, for example, with females, we are overpopulated compared to Wyandotte County. It's not necessarily a bad thing. We enroll more female students, and we retain more female students than our peers. So, from that perspective, but doesn't mean that we have fully addressed the issues in terms of gender equity and parity and things like that. But looking at persons of color, so the Board of Regents data does not break it out down to the level. It does, but it's just not present in their public reports based on race and ethnicity. But even though we represent enroll 16% less students of color compared to the population of Wyandotte County, we enroll 6% more students of color than our peers in the state of Kansas, which is progress, right? Is as being part of the most diverse county in Kansas. We should be representing that from that perspective. However, when you start looking at some of the data that is broken down in terms of the Board of Regents, in terms of spring retention rates and graduation rates, we tend to retain our Black and Hispanic students at higher rates than our peers in the state of Kansas, but we're not making a lot of progress in terms of graduation rates, specifically with African American students. By percentage, compared to all the Black and African American students across the Kansas community college systems, we graduate 1% fewer students than our peers. Our overall graduation rate between Kckcc and all of our peers is 1%. So it's indicative of that, but as the most diverse campus, as the most diverse county, very diverse region, these are areas where we're performing graduation rates at marginal levels, but how do we continue to improve that so we become centers of excellence in terms of the communities that we represent? And then also another point that I think is interesting when you look at the Board of Regents data is that in terms of non-resident students, so people who are not from what we would consider the residential service area, they graduate at 10% lower than non-residents at our community colleges. And I think that's something that, something that substantiates the need to provide, more majors and all the things we've talked about, from my colleagues and other peers about services we're providing. Because being part of a metropolitan area, you would suspect that non-resident students would have a better chance of being successful in this type of environment. But not to sit there and say that there's anything indicative of what we're doing right now, but this is opportunities for growth and stuff like that, which I'll go forward. Any questions about this brief synopsis of data so far? So one of the other things that is specifically from the study is looking at financial security graduation rates, specifically comparing our students who are considered Pell eligible versus all of our students. And as you can see here, Pell eligible students tend to have higher graduation rates than our non-Pell eligible students. That is often indicative of campuses that have the mission that we have to support students of all levels, but it also speaks to how we're also supporting other students to graduate also, and how do we balance that in terms of Pell eligibility. Because we also know Pell eligibility is a big factor towards, and financial insecurity is a big factor towards success, but it impacts different types of populations, whether it be race, ethnicity, age, differently, military status, and other students. This is data that's specifically from the survey in terms of academic preparation graduation rates. So these are students who, as their intake into campus and evaluation, they would be considered part of developmental education versus all the students. As you can see here, based on these cohorts, the gap between developmental education students and all students has been started to grow between 2012 and 2016. I would suspect it's gotten worse as we start compiling the cohort data in terms of the students who we expected to graduate during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's a brief summary of the data. In terms of recommendations, I think here's the recommendations that I thought as I was preparing this presentation is twofold. One, there's always need to continue to advance our data integrity, governance, and fidelity. And that's fancy terms for how do we create data that is interpretable, usable by all parts of campus. So, and one of the things that I've been working on with the team on campus is how do we provide better types of real-time enrollment data reporting to departments so they can make decision-making. So for example, like what you saw was the data related to placement scores. That is information that Mr. Pope and academic affairs people need to know right now for planning courses for the fall. And so how do we continue to do that and make sure that we're using the right data standards and having consistent language so that it can empower individuals. The other thing that, and I mentioned this specifically talking to interdimensionality, is starting to do more retention modeling based on unique factors. So I've mentioned this before. So how a African-American student is, their likelihood of being retained by the campus is much different than a white student or Hispanic student, but then we also have to factor in military status, age, caregiving status, figure out, and so there's things that we do collect from the application from the mission and financial aid applications that we could use to kind of start to do that type of analysis. But also what other type of data collections do we do so we can collect the information so that as we do our predictive analysis of students that we could provide much more tiered, specific services for students. And so that is something that is a high priority in terms of like the strategic enrollment management planning and future plannings, which will be your due for a report 2 in next month, is how we're gonna build that out. So not only can we show where the market of students are in our communities to support advancing equity, but also how we can strategize services and opportunities based on all the unique natures of students, right? Because it's important to look at peers. It's also important to look at national trends, but ultimately it comes down to how you're supporting your students based on the strength. And so that's one thing we have to continue working on. The profile, process, and policy, those are the 3 Ps of retention. You know, how are you structuring the profile of students that you want to come to campus? Part of this exercise is to discuss that and compare how we reflect to the community. What are those processes that we put in place to help reduce barriers for students or help them achieve their goals? And also policies. And so those are things that are fundamentally the tenets of any good retention practice is, you know, those 3 things. And then more importantly, we've had a lot of conversation around, in this meeting and elsewhere as to how do we align those inclusion and equity tactics with goals and missions, the missions of the institution to foster excellence. That is critical, but one of the things I've thought about as I was preparing my remarks, equity and inclusion impacts all aspects of all activities that an institution do. I'll take, for example, the privilege of where I work in student affairs and enrollment management, how financial aid structures budgets, how they impact advocacy for Pell eligibility and stuff like that has an impact on inclusion. And so often we think that these things in terms of race and equity live within a box, but really they have to be embedded into all the practices that we have. And I wanted to share this example here as kind of the idea of steps going forward in terms of how do you prioritize these. So this is a very common matrix you see of enrollment management planning, but I framed it in the context of advancing equity and inclusion. So if the left side is, your left side shows the current base, which is the students that we currently serve in terms of populations, and the underserved potential market, the way that I am suggesting to our cabinet and our campus that as we make our enrollment planning is to frame it in this framework, right? So we have a lot of existing programs and services. That's the first, second column, and then new programs and services. So one thing that we have to do is continue to celebrate the excellence that happens with the students that we currently provide. And so you think of things like normalizing success of first-generation students. It used to be very much a stigma if you're a first-generation student, but one of the things that has happened over the number of years in higher education is that we started to celebrate that experience, because one thing that we found out, I'm a first-generation student, many of us in this room are first-generation students, but to celebrate that success, as opposed to saying this is a deficit, that you're a first-generation student. That's the idea of a penetration tactic that's in place. And then, in terms of underserved markets, for example, we're underserving overall in Wyandotte County, Asian markets and Hispanic markets. We need to think about those our Black African American students too. We have to think about those programs and services that we need to develop to attract more of those students to our campus, and also provide the support they need so that their families can have faith into the investment of education that they're going to receive here. And then there's always that question about what are the new things we need to do, and that's really that right column. So we know there are needs for students that we currently serve related to race and equity. Think for example, the food bank. That is to address food insecurity, which actually we know impacts underrepresented populations much more than regular populations. So that's an example of bringing a new program and service to help support current students. And the final column is, as we bring in new types of students that are not of our current base, there also might be unique new programs and services that we need to develop for those students. And those are things that we call diversification. So this is a very common model when you look at enrollment management planning, but it has as much, I think it's just as relevant when it comes to equity and diversity planning. So like one of the things that my colleague, Ms. McGee, was talking about was the strategic plan for the strategic planning exercise at the Center of Equity and Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement does. That is wonderful work, because it starts to bring that brings that whole entire campus conversation to the level where we figure out those type of supports, so that teams like the admissions team, the advising team can work with the academic affairs and finance and marketing teams to build that experience. And so, so in summary of the report, it's a really great start and I really want to acknowledge the work they've done in terms of doing those advancement metrics. But we also know that COVID-19 has been very disruptive, but it's also given us that opportunity to really think about, what are we doing here, what we can expand, and also how we can better serve our community. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Excellent report. Can we get a copy of it? It was a lot to absorb, and it just takes me back to when I took the diversity, equity, and inclusion training from Accct last year. Mm-hmm. And you talk about it just has to be embedded, and that goes to the main thing they told, it has to be a mindset for your institution. Yeah. And so that's what you are addressing, you're telling us now. It has to be a mindset, campus-wide, for it to work. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Is our participation over with the Harvard project, or is this an ongoing?
It is for now.
this was round one.
Okay.
First cohort to go through. I haven't received any additional information
All right.
from them in discussions of like a round two or a follow-up or an extension.
Trustee Daniels, in respect to the fellowship, the distinction that that Drs. Chan and Delphi had, or Wilson had on behalf of the campus, in many ways, regardless of engagement of that project, it set the stage for us to figure out next step forward. And that's really kind of the purpose of these fellowships, is to sit there and get that, get that lift. And so it's helped bring that awareness, and I'm pleased to hear all the other things are happening, behind, as you've heard today, is behind the scenes, right? Because that's part of that process.
So we can look forward to future reports of some kind as we move it forward.
Right.
Helps provide setting the base for the institution and then identifying.
I can't hear what Dr. Mosier's saying. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm going to turn my mic off. It helps to provide a base for where you are as an institution and identifying next steps or large buckets of areas where you ought to be seeking to put more attention, more resources.
Yeah, and from my perspective, in terms of building out the next phase of the strategic enrollment management plan, reflecting on what Trustee Sutton, this is critical that we infuse this into that planning, because we can recruit and market anywhere we want to in the country and attract new students. But how does that align to our mission of excellence in supporting those students that are inherent in the mission of KCK Community College and the community that we're serving?
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Myers? Okay, excellent report.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, hearing no questions, moving on then to the discussion contract extension for Interim Vice President of Student Affairs, presented by Dr. Mosier.
All righty, thank you very much. And after that, really wonderful report really helps us identify some direction that we can go. I would like to extend the contract for the Interim Vice President of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management. Currently, Dr. Myers is under a contract that takes him until May 6th. We are currently in the interview process for the permanent VP SAEM. The hopes is to have that position start on July 1st. So I'm requesting that we extend his contract under the same terms as previous, which is the compensation of $10,000 a month, $1,000 for living expenses, and the availability of a college car if needed. So it would be an extension from May 6th until June 30th.
Move approval of the extension.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Mosher.
Very good, thank you. Okay, you're stuck with us a little while longer.
All right. Next, the downtown update to be presented by Dr. Mosier, please.
All right. Let's see. So it's been a really busy month for the association as well. On March 28th, after following our board meeting, the Health and Wellness, Kansas City, Kansas Health and Wellness Condominium Association held its first association meeting. And with that, we elected our board of directors. The directors for the association include myself as the president, Mr. Randy Kallstrom from Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network as the vice president. Mr. Mark Hewlett from the YMCA will serve as the treasurer, and Ms. Whitney Bartelli from Community America Credit Union will serve as secretary. Jaron Ravin is the board member director for Swope Healthcare. So we've started our full and formal association meetings, which require all the same note and minute taking and actions as we do in other public meetings. So it was good to have that take place. We also had the Articles of Incorporation finalized at the state level for the association, and approval of the bylaws at our last meeting. So with that and the identification of directors and officers, we are moving forward, and Mr. Beach is working on finalizing an escrow account with one of our local banks, which would hold the money in one location for all fundraising efforts for the project. So as money is needed to be paid out, it will all come from that one account, and it will all be trackable. So a lot of good movement last week with the association itself. Let me see. Well, let me talk about pricing. You know, as we have seen, the prices go up for construction projects. As I mentioned, the one for Hill Pet Nutrition going from $250 million to $300 million. I've reached out to 4 different entities, 3 construction companies and 1 estimating company. And in round numbers, we're probably looking at about a 7 to 10% escalation due to inflation and supply chain. But we're already looking at ways that we can mitigate that expense. One of the ways is, I'm going to bring up my monitor again and hope I don't run out of battery. Share a screen with you. So as we look at the downtown block in its entirety, the red line is the current footprint of the building, the new building structure. We have obtained all of the property within the building structure, or as it has been unofficially assigned to us by the unified government, but they're very verbal now that property will belong to Kckcc. The top right-hand corner and the top right, you know, the little leg coming off of that somewhat blue box, that was land that was assigned to us in the beginning, or allocated to us in the beginning, but then was kind of pulled away and reallocated to the Reardon Center redevelopment project, which has expired with the UG. And as it has expired, I immediately went back to request that that land come back to the college project, as it is definitely needed. And what we can do with that, let's see, is make it additional parking. So that football field will hold 108 vehicles from my estimate, and that top of black space, we're looking at using that as a kind of a permanent dirt working area for the commercial construction technology program, so that they can use little mini dozers, kind of bobcats, backhoes, those types of equipment to operate them on dirt in addition to simulators. So with that addition of property, this is the parking level of the facility. When we needed to add more spots, we had to increase that parking. The red parking, the red box represent what was somewhat originally intended to be parking. So the additional parking space outside of that red box costs approximately $5 million. So by not doing that section and using the football field in essence where we went up. If it was 7% off of 70 million, right, that's $5 million basically, $4.9 million. So we can kind of have a wash with that. There'll be some expense in prepping the parking lot and such, but we won't have a complete $5 million addition to the project. So we really appreciate the UG coming back and reassigning that property to the college. So that will be good. Tammy has been meeting with Catherine Carter and Rob Richardson and some other people to set up a meeting so that we can get all of these properties combined. We need to go through all the city planning and ordinances, get those lined up before the UG will transfer that property to us. So if you look at that block, then basically the college will own the ground of that entire block except for the Willa Gill Center, which the Unified Government is also looking for a possible solution to provide the unhoused and the hungry benefits beyond just the food kitchen. At a different location. So eventually we can envision that the entire block will be belong to Kckcc on the ground level, and any buildings that are brought up would belong to the association. So a lot of really good news with that and some really good conversation going on. So that's a very big deal for the project. I'll keep this slide up for just a second. As a reminder, one of the things that we also want to do is add diagonal parking. Diagonal parking on both sides of State Avenue, if you can see the cursor here. The UG has approved that as long as we get all the measurements, and it will work correct. Up on this area is 6th Street. It's possible to do diagonal parking probably on the block side of the street, and we will be requesting that from 6th Street to 7th Street on Nebraska. That becomes a one-way westbound road, which means diagonal parking on the entire block side. There's approximately 41 spots up here in this parking lot that was later found to been somewhat assigned to Willa Gill. So with these 100 spots here, we'll need to assign 40 spots. And it can be here or it can be along the road. If it's along the road, it is at a much better grade. There isn't a slope grade for clients to park and receive services. So things are moving together well. We're talking about tearing down these buildings, possibly sooner than the 70% if the boards and association agrees, and some other work with the city. So good progress being made there. On the fundraising part, stop this for a second. On the fundraising part, we ended up with a $12 million line item appropriation in the state budget. The governor will, we believe the governor will sign that either tomorrow or Thursday by the latest. It will be the end of her 10-day by the time she received it from her staffers. So rumors are that she is supportive of this project and it won't be vetoed. So that helps with the fundraising. We also received the other $1 million from Wyandotte Health Network, which we greatly appreciate, and that will help us move to the technical, architectural, and engineering design portion of the project. So with the current funds that we have and assuming that that $12 million comes in, that puts us at 58% of our fundraising goal, which is fantastic. Kckc's goal is approximately $42 million of the total 70. And with the dollars allocated at this time, we are at approximately 36 million that would go to Kckcc. So our portion is moving along rather well. And we have some additional earmark requests that we're doing with Moran for the Health and Wellness Center for $3 million, and the Kckcc Commercial Construction Technology program, $2.1 million in equipment. And with Representative Davids, we are talking about a solar project, and I'll have that down under new business so that we can take action on that, or if the board decides to do so. So right now, everything's moving along very well. Destiny has arrived, and she is in storage and anxiously awaiting to be put on her pedestal in downtown KCK. So I'd take any questions.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dr. Mosier. Excellent report. Excuse me. Okay, and moving now on to new business. First item is the resolution of intent to non-renew contract for employment presented by Dr. Mosier.
Thank you, Chair Criswell. I have two resolutions to read. The first one, whereas Thomas Bestgrove was initially employed by Kansas City, Kansas Community College on August 7th, 2008 as a teacher faculty member, and whereas Thomas Bestgrove is currently employed as a teacher faculty member for Kansas City, Kansas Community College, and whereas Thomas Bestgrove is entitled to due process protection at Kansas City, Kansas Community College pursuant to KSA 72-2251, and whereas the Board of Trustees of Kansas City, Kansas Community College finds that the contract of Thomas Bestgrove for the 2022-2023 academic year set forth, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of Kansas City, Kansas Community College, Section 1, that it hereby declared to be the intent of the Board of Trustees of Kansas City, Kansas Community College to not renew the contract of Thomas Bestgrove as a teacher faculty member at Kansas City, Kansas Community College. Section 2, the Secretary of the Board of Trustees is hereby authorized and directed to give written notice on or before May 20th, 2022 to Thomas Bestgrove of the board's intent to not renew said contract. Section 3, that the notice contain the following reasons for the board's intent to not renew the contract. A, due to Mr. Bestgrove's failure to meet performance expectations. Section 4, that the notice shall state that the teacher faculty member is entitled to a hearing before a hearing officer with regards to the board's actions, provided he file written notice of request for such a hearing with the Secretary of the Board of Trustees within 15 days from the date of notice. Adopted by the Board of Trustees of Kansas City, Kansas Community College this 19th day of April 2022, and it has lines for all the trustees' signature.
Move approval of the resolution.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And then the second one, please, Dr. Mosier.
The second resolution, whereas Dwayne Rick Sprick was initially employed by Kansas City, Kansas Community College on August 17th, 1992 as a teacher faculty member, and whereas Dwayne Rick Sprick is currently employed as a teacher faculty member for Kansas City, Kansas Community College, and whereas Dwayne Rick Sprick is entitled to due process protection at Kansas City, Kansas Community College pursuant to KSA 72-2251, and whereas the Board of Trustees of Kansas City, Kansas Community College finds that the contract of Dwayne Rick Sprick for the 2022-2023 academic year set forth. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of Kansas City, Kansas Community College, Section 1, that it is hereby declared to be the intent of the Board of Trustees of Kansas City, Kansas Community College to not renew the contract of Dwayne Rick Sprick as a teacher faculty member at Kansas City, Kansas Community College. Section 2, that the Secretary of the Board of Trustees is hereby authorized and directed to give written notice on or before May 20, 2022 to Dwayne Rick Sprick of the board's intent to not renew said contract. Section 3, that the notice contain the following reasons for the board's intent to not renew the contract. A, due to Mr. Sprick's failure to meet performance expectations. Section 4, that the notice shall state that the teacher faculty member is entitled to a hearing before a hearing officer with regards to the board's action, provided he file written notice of a request for such a hearing with the Secretary of the Board of Trustees within 15 days from the date of this notice, adopted by the Board of Trustees of Kansas City, Kansas Community College this 19th day of April 2022, and it also has lines for each board member's signature.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much.
All right.
Was there a comment? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Okay. All righty. Next is the county mill levy conversation presented by Dr. Mosher.
Sure. So there has been a conversation, and it usually happens this time of year when organizations are looking at, one second, sorry, at if they're going to increase, decrease, or remain the same on the mill levy. So I want to share a screen with you to help provide a picture of where Kckcc is in relationship to the mill. If you take a single dollar and you identify where those cents of the dollars go to, you can see that the unified government is currently at a combined rate of 46 cents on the dollar. USD 500 and is also combined with USD 500 library. So the district by itself has 30 cents, and then the library has 7 cents for a combined total of 37 cents per dollar. Kckc's current cents on the dollar is 16. So our percentage of the taxes within Wyandotte County is actually the smallest of any entity, in any taxing district in the county. So the conversation has been, do everyone look at lowering the mill rate for their organizations? The UG is looking at it. I can't speak for the other entities. I do not believe that this is something that we can do. There may be conversation that, well, let's everyone go in and lower the mill by 2. Well, 2 mills out of 16 is a much more dramatic cut than 2 mills out of 46.
Absolutely.
Right? The multiplier on that is about threefold.
Yeah.
So 1 mill is $1.5 million for the college. We do have a lot of great projects that we are bringing on board to provide our students better learning environments than we have been able to provide them in the past. And that will help with student success, which will in turn help create a healthy, educated community. It will also create taxpayers for the county for individuals who may not currently be on the tax roll. So it's also a benefit to the county for that, which would provide additional taxpayers. Again, in order to do what we're trying to do to provide high-quality educational facilities for our students that has not been available, prior to 6 years ago or so. We do have a lot of catch-up to do, which we're doing a great job at. But again, my recommendation would be that we not lower the mill levy. When we met with Mayor Garner, had a really great conversation with him. And he asked that we bring together, it's just the administration, like CEO, CFO of each organization to sit down, with the mayor and have a conversation on what this might look like, if at all. So when we have this conversation, my intent is to have the discussion with the mayor and the other superintendents in the area that Kckcc has made a promise not to raise the mill levy, and we have not raised it. I wrote it down somewhere between one was 2016 and one was 2014. So we want to hold that we would hold our mill levy flat because we still have work to do. So if the board has additional information they would like for me to take to the meeting, I'd be glad to do so. And I think the mayor's made a good call on just bringing everyone together and just sit down with the kind of the CEO, CFO teams, and at least, and have this conversation and what it might look like.
Right. Absolutely. And just for the board, I know that I spoke with some of you individually, and then I think there was a couple of emails that have been going around, but just I asked Dr. Mosher to put this back on the agenda because we needed to close the loop on this conversation to make sure that folks understood kind of what the game plan was for the college, because I know that there were some conversations about individuals meeting with other individuals. Some of it involved elected officials, some did not. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on number one, kind of what the game plan is. And then also just wanted to make sure that, that it was said publicly, at least, and I can't speak for every board member, but I will speak for myself. As far as raising the mill, I do not agree that we should raise the mill. And I wanted to at least take an opportunity to publicly say that. I've said it in the past, and I say it all the time. If nothing else, just wanted to, if anyone else wants to comment, that's fine. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine too. But if nothing else, just wanted you to kind of understand the clarity in the closing of the circle on this type of a conversation. So with that, I'll open it up or hand it back to Dr. Mosher.
Yeah,
Yes, I agree we should not raise the mill levy as well. You can say that I agree with that too.
Okay, very good. The other thing I forgot to mention is inflation is hitting us just as much as it's hitting everyone else. So our costs will continue to go up. So we need to be able to meet those increasing costs, as every organization does.
And this is Vice Chair Bruni. I'm also not in favor of raising, nor am I in favor of lowering the mill levy.
Yes.
And a little more history on where this conversation has come from. Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Bynum have been reaching out to folks for several years trying to have this conversation and couldn't seem to get traction. And then the young man that took Commissioner Philbrook's space has really been pushing hard. So I'm glad to see that the mayor has picked up the ball that's been rolling around for a few years to at least have the taxing entities talk with one another about this topic. But I'm not in favor of either raising or lowering the community college mill rate.
Very good, thank you. And I'll add that there would be no elected officials at this meeting. It's just institutional administration.
Thank you.
I'll just correct you. The mayor is an elected official.
Okay, thank you for that, yes.
Okay, any other comment? Questions? Okay, in my previous statement, I said raising. I, of course, meant I am opposed to raising or lowering, standing neutral, just for a point of clarification there. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate you. Next item on, excuse me, on the agenda is the approval of the college. Quick question, is the solar information going to come next, or is it the college policy? Because I don't have the solar project on here.
If I may, because I have the PowerPoint up, if I could move forward with the solar project.
Okay, great.
So this is for the downtown facility, and it came up during conversations that we're having with Senator Moran and his staff, and wanting to move forward the 2 earmarks that were previously discussed. So one of the things that we're trying to do is maintain the stability and the ability for all of our organizations to operate in a very efficient way, a very affordable way, which will help continue the success of that organization to serve the community. So there is an opportunity under the current earmarks for 2023 through the Department of Energy to do solar. And if it's going to be used for production, there is a 1-to-1 match. I've been working with a team of engineers over the last 2 weeks or so to design a system that we believe would maximize the roofline potential of solar collection. A lot of information is up on the screen, and if you notice, it's by building, the number of square feet on that roof line, the estimated kilowatt generation per square foot. We have the estimated electric consumption in kilowatts per year, which we collected quite a while ago when we were having conversations with BPU. Anticipated solar production is there in kilowatt hours. The anticipating building offset is how much of the solar electric generation would offset the standard inline service from the electrical providers. So the tech labs have huge roof lines. So that offset would generate, is estimated to generate 85% of the power for those tech labs. The building 2 is the educational stack and the atrium. So it's 3 stories, 1 roof line, right? So it's not going to generate as high of a percentage for that building because there's more space than roof. Building 3 is similar. It would generate about 36% of the power for that facility. Community America Credit Union, remember it's 1 story, 1 business entity, about 5,000 square feet. So that would generate about 99% of their power. So my recommendation to them, if we decide to go this route, is that the roof line, whoever's respective roof line it is, then that solar generation would go to that facility. This is something that is above and beyond the $70 million price tag, but it's a 50-50 match. The project is approximately we'll just call it $2 million. It's slightly less. So the organizations would need to come up with the other $1 million. When we look to the far right, estimated 30-year savings, you can see by building. So the tech labs would save $1.2 million, educational stack about $2 million, the healthcare building 1.5, and the credit union about 400,000. And because the Department of Energy would be paying half of this, the payback years would be cut in half, right? So when we do and we look at it that way, we're generating, the revenue is even greater. So with the current calculations, on those payback years, it's a savings of $5 million. If we just look at our investment, it's double that in the saving value, not $10 million, but we would only pay for half of it. So right now I'm asking for the board's input, and if decided to continue to pursue. We still need to have conversations with the other organizations. I think in the long run, it's going to be a benefit to the building. It would also be an opportunity to provide education to elementary and secondary students, as we plan to put monitors in the lobby areas on what the solar generation of electricity is, the dollar savings, the carbon reduction factors, and all of that. So it would be a living and learning lab for students all the way down, into the elementary school system.
Students and citizens too.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dr. Mosier, could you remind me, I think we talked about this briefly in the Finance Committee meeting, but what is the anticipated lifespan of the solar hardware that we would have to install?
30 years. It also, when we look at the social equity in communities, the communities that are underrepresented, have lower incomes, usually have poorer air quality due to smog, et cetera. And in the study, 65% of the greenhouse gases in the KC metro area come from buildings. So, and the older buildings that don't produce heat as cleanly and are less insulated and all of that, it just, the negative social impact due to petroleum-based products is much greater in the underserved populations than those that may have a little more wealth.
Yeah.
Now, if I understand, Dr. Moore, you're not looking for a vote from the board today, you're looking just for a consensus to move forward. I would support that.
We can't hear you.
Can't.
I supposed to be on, so I don't know what happened.
Oh, push the button again.
It's on, it's green.
Hit it again.
There's off. Yeah, it was off. Yeah, I understand no votes needed today. You're looking for a consensus to move forward. I think it is a good project. I would support moving forward. It's more further discussion.
Yeah, I would support it as well.
Okay. Me too.
All right.
Agree. I
Me
think the
too.
cost savings is there. Our building's definitely going to be there for longer than 8 years, so I think the payback is going to come back in tenfold. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And with that, I believe that is all the information that I have for today.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mosier.
Thank you.
Okay, the final item is the approval of the college policies presented by Trustee Linda Hoskins Sutton for student organization, childbirth leave, and attendance punctuality.
All right, thank you.
Trustee Hoskins Sutton?
Trustees, do you have any questions about these policies or any changes that we're making or proposing?
It looked good to me.
No, we're good.
Then I turn it back to you, Chair, to ask for a motion for approval.
May I have a motion for approval, please?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, well, that takes us to the end of our time together. I will not sing the Carol Burnett song on that note, but I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All
We
right.
almost hit the 4-hour record.
Right, yeah. All right, motion carries, meeting is adjourned. And Rosalind, thank you for laughing at my joke. I think you're the only one who got it.
On to the tour at Centennial Hall.
Yeah, if you're going to tour Centennial Hall, I would say connect
Be over
with
there.
Mike Beach probably, right? Is that good? Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you. Have a great week.